Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another year. You're back with Joe Wehbe Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about what you're going to be an amateur at this year because it's a new year. Instead of being pro and amazing at something, why don't you be amateur at something instead? Now, here's something that I was amateur at last year. So I made this song when I was locked down at COVID. I'll try and play it for you a bit. It's on my other YouTube channel. It's called Hey There Corona, which is a parody on Hey There Delilah, with a bit of music about coronavirus. Oh, go back a bit.
Hey there, Corona, what's it like in Wuhan City? You're 5,000 miles away, but I know you'll be in Sydney really fast. You just took Italy up the ass. That wasn't nice. Hey there, Corona.
We can. So that's a bit of the song. The rest of it's on the YouTube channel. If you're really super interested, you can go check that out. But it was funny, I made that for a bit of fun. I'm not a musical person. It's not actually me singing. I actually got my cousin, who's a very good singer, to dub that basically. And I just lip synced and I made a YouTube video about it. I sent it around to a bunch of people, just having a bit of fun, of course. It was really funny, some of the questions that came back. I remember one person even asked my mum if I was doing it to get paid, if I was getting paid for making that silly, funny little song about coronavirus and its impact on Sydney. And it's so funny how we think everything, well, when you come across people who think that everything you do, you have to get paid for. And that people furrow their eyebrows and get confused when you do things that aren't for money, and they're getting confused why you're doing it if you're not doing it for money. And it's a very sad reality in most people's lives. Obviously, because a lot of the things that you do, not for money directly, can probably make you the most money because you're able to place longer term bets. If I did love making those parodies all the time, I don't know if I have much of a voice, but even if I could still leverage my cousin's voice, and I had a real go at it on YouTube, and I made maybe 50 in a single year or something like that, I'm sure I would find a way to maybe monetize it if I love doing it that much. And I just had fun that's all it really was a bit of fun and a bit of creative inspiration. And that's me being an amateur. And there's many more things I'm an amateur at. But it's a really humble place to come from, because obviously we talked, so I've taken a 2-week break from recording, though for you, this is probably just yesterday. You may be listening to the last episode, or you just caught up on it now. But we were talking about what if you meant to do more than one thing. We talked about the examples of certain sports stars, people like that, who have defied what everyone expected of them, defied what was working, making them successful, to do something that they were interested in, they wanted to pursue. But in their lives, in everyone else's eyes, looked crazy, ridiculous, and even in everyone else's eyes, it looked like they failed at doing it, but they gave it a try. And it's really hard to do that if you're focused on being a pro at everything and doing things only so you can win or get paid. But when it's about a challenge or having fun, you give yourself permission to pursue your interests. So being an amateur is different to being completely unprofessional. The other questions, so I was at a Christmas lunch on the weekend, and it was funny how many questions I was getting about the podcast. It was the first time I'd seen this particular group of friends. Not everyone necessarily had listened to it, of course, but some people had obviously seen on Instagram or other places the content going up, the clips and whatnot. And they're getting very confused about how this fits in my life, how podcasting gets into my life, and how it's sustainable, and how much real estate I'm still doing, and how all these jigsaw pieces fit together. And I made that point in the last episode again, but it's just funny to see it in real life, weeks before the episode would actually be released, that we have problems, especially in the Western culture, of having people in more than one box. Everyone kind of wants to put you in one box so they can understand you. It doesn't say much about you. It says a lot about everyone else. Not even picking on everyone else, but it's the culture we're in. People really have this need to box you up into something they can easily and quickly understand. And when you cross more than one box, everyone loses their minds. Right? It's crazy. The fun of doing stuff like the podcast and the song is not so I can keep people guessing. I really wouldn't care. If I cared what people thought, I wouldn't be doing whatever it is I wanted to do all the time. It's just a funny thing to observe, and it concerns me much more for their benefit than I'm concerned about what people think of me. Because it means that they're not thinking very flexibly about what they could be doing with their time and what's in arm's reach for them. And I've fallen in love with this concept of arm's reach lately. Not things that are way out in the distance like being Steve Jobs or Albert Einstein, but things that are within arm's reach, like getting creative, trying something new, not being afraid to be an amateur at something, trying a new sport, a new hobby, reading a book. Maybe it is making a podcast. Doesn't have to be, right? So it's really interesting getting the questions about how do you get paid to do the podcast. I even had one friend who was borderline suspicious of me. He's like, "You wouldn't be doing this. Where's the dollars coming? I'm watching your clips. You're not selling anything. When are you going to start selling something? And what's it all for?" And almost suspicious, looking for, if there's no obvious way he's monetizing this podcast, there must be something lurking. Okay, a podcast is an amazing platform. It's a long-term bet for income, sure. It's probably the last thing I've personally thought about for a podcast. But I mean, there's so many ways to connect people to programs or projects that are getting running. If someone's an author, a podcast is a great way to kind of engage people before they buy a book. You can see what you try before you buy, try their ideas before you buy their book. You get all sorts of leverage. It helps you meet people, helps you make better connections, attract more like-minded people. The list goes on, builds your network. So the indirect ways of monetizing a podcast are almost endless. And so that's why you can start a project like this without even thinking about it almost. Sorry, I keep touching my mic. My editor's not going to be happy with me. Sorry, George, if you're listening. There are so many ways, so many indirect ways. You can almost, I wouldn't say completely, start a project without thinking about it. You can almost just jump in knowing that there is so much leverage you build, normally by doing things that are just completely fun. So let's talk about being an amateur. Now, I am not some huge podcaster by the time you're listening to this, and it's being released the 1st of January 2021 for context. I haven't even looked at the views yet, to be honest. That's not very professional. Probably look at how many people are listening. It's not the metric that I care about first when doing this podcast. I am primarily interested in depth of experience, primarily, which is how much people are getting out of the episodes, apart from the fun I'm having doing them and sharing what I learn and refining what I learn. And yeah, there's so many other things that are factored into doing it. But it certainly was never an expectation. This would be the Joe Rogan Experience or Tim Ferriss show within a couple of months or maybe even a couple of years. I don't know if I even need it to do that, which is cool because that means I can just keep doing it as long as it's fun and a good use of my time. So my point is, I am still an amateur. I plan to be for some time. And then I've also been thinking about, on some level, it's probably liberating just to stay an amateur forever. It's kind of like being a student forever. So being an amateur in terms of, I talked in the first episode how I had struggles with recording. I still touch the mic and I get all these little noises. I've had saliva noises when I've been speaking, and I've listened back to some of my episodes and they're still there, right? You can go hear all the flaws and see all the warts on this project. There's a lot of amateur parts to it, what I'm doing. No one No one's dying. It's not the end of the world for anyone, not even me. So being the amateur is not, obviously about being unpolished and dropping the ball necessarily. That's not the goal. It's just, it's okay if those things happen because no one really cares as much as you think. Also, it's liberating. Not attaching too much to it, not putting all your ego or your identity into something you're doing just for fun, like making a song. How can I make that song and not have fun? It didn't have to be a great song. But there's no way I'm going to do something for fun that doesn't feel fun to do. So being the amateur can be liberating in that way by taking all the pressure off and you kind of just playing a game. And depending on the game you pick, it could be a game that leads somewhere really productive and amazing anyway. It might help you afford your MVL, fund your MVL for your whole life. Who knows? It's different to, I guess the element of being a pro is about showing up, about being consistent, about putting your systems in place. Though I feel like the professional elements to what I do and the professional flavor to what I do actually makes it more fun because I get more effective at doing it. But there's something liberating to always being the amateur. Not everything you do has to have a clear business purpose or productive or work purpose behind it. We all need an outlet. Otherwise we're caging up who we are inside. And it's not for attention, but it can be shared with those people you love and care about. So the question today to think about is, what if you're forever an amateur at most of the things you do? What if you stayed attached going forward? So thank you very much for listening. Just remember that if you're listening for the first time, to go back, these podcasts are made in order that I think they're best consumed. So go back to the start and listen all the way through, ideally. But if not, always remember before we're back again tomorrow that the best way to open 1,000 doors for you is to concentrate on opening doors for others. So if that's with this episode, you might share it with people who it might open a door for or discuss it with them. I've had a couple of people who take this to their workplace or morning community and use it to start a conversation with people about, an interesting idea door that's just open. So there's many ways to use this as a good excuse to open doors for yourself, but also concentrate on opening doors for others. Thank you very much. See you again tomorrow.